dear friend. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Just came from the highway directly, and I was coming from the teaching because I was teaching today at my work coming, and I'm like, okay, let's do the recording. I'm excited to have you as a guest. I'm excited about this trip to Texas. I'll be there. So I just got my ticket, so I'm excited. It will be fun. It'll be fun.
My son lives in Texas. I have a son in Texas named Jason.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm quite excited. When the entire crew invited me, they go like, Daniel, you must come, you must come. I was working on all my schedule. I'm like, yes, I can make it. I was so happy. And so did my mom and my sister. Go like, Daniel, you must go. You must meet all these people. You must do the presentations. You must have fun. Go. So I'm excited. I'm blessed. I must say, I'm really happy. So today, I was thinking, tax will be off, but not a big deal. That's why I call you in. I could call it, but because Paul, you're just amazing. And you are the best, and I really love having you. And you have so much to offer. Ask Paul to join us. So.
Oh, thank you.
That's why. So we're gonna promote your book. I did that already on Divas. More than a couple times. I posted also in the chat. And what I'm gonna do, so this Friday, the reason why me and Nick put a little hold on it, we were waiting also to add a little page about our families to say thank you regarding the kids book. And then my Dracula book is coming out. So I'm excited all about Dracula and everything that is coming out. But, so we have an hour because I know you have a show after this. So it'll be awesome. We're going to do a little bit of introduction. And then, you can tell me a little bit about your work. Then we're going to go towards to the new book, of course, where you can find it, what it's all about. You can talk about it as much as you want. And then we'll go a little bit about, the serial killer visits that you've been, because you've been where the basically
Are you talking about the
Green River Killer, the Flag the Ripper.
Oh, okay. And then you have the Long Island Killer, which they just recently went after.
Yeah, and Long Island Killer.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to just say, tell us a little bit about those places that you really did visit. And, after we are done with the book. And then Tex is going to arrange all the commercials, everything. He's going to also put the posting from your book, from the Lulu there. So, and then it will be live on Saturday at 1 p.m. my time. So that will be noon your time. So it's not too late. It's not too early. Pretty good time. So are you ready? I'm going to just introduce you.
Let me get one little thing. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. I just got some notes from my last investigation in case we talk about it.
Oh my God, yeah, you can also talk about that. It's not,
okay.
And I'm gonna also have, who else? September the 7th, I have you and I have Tim. So I think it's gonna be, and we have hour and a half. So that's on Divas Dimension. So it's gonna be pretty cool to have both of you. You guys are pretty awesome. He's coming from Discovery Channel. So I think it's going to be pretty cool. And you can talk about extraterrestrials. I think it's going to be fun. So you let me know when you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to start recording. Record. Okay, let's see. Okay. I'm going to start right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here at Infamous Minds. Tex is off today, but I have somebody here with you that is so amazing that it's my pleasure and honor to call a friend, an author, a person that did so much investigation in paranormal when it comes to serial killers. He did visit many different places, dig into many different, research when it's coming to paranormal, ghosts, spirits, connections to the other side. And of course today, this Infamous Minds is a little bit different because I have nobody else but one and only Paul Dale Roberts, also host of the Round Table, wonderful author, over 80 books, and I have more than a couple in my collection. I can say they're quite amazing. Welcome, dear friend. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Danielle, for having me. Yeah, a lot of things have been happening. We've been doing paranormal investigations, doing a lot of research for my next book. I got a book out just recently, and I'm excited about that. So, in fact, the book that I got out is called HPI, The Truth is Out There. So, and it has all the latest investigations. We talk about different various things in the paranormal field. It's a good book. It's a good book. And I heard you got a book coming out about your ancestor Dracula.
Yes, and that one is also coming out. I'm so excited, and you are in one of the chapters, all about your research, your studies. What do you think about that area? When you think about Transylvania and different kind of paranormal activities that are happening there. I love some of your artist work, so I'm looking forward, to have you. And like I'm saying, it's my pleasure to have you inside of my book. It's an honor. I can say that too.
Thank
and
you.
I did order your book yesterday, so I'm quite excited, to have it in my hands and start reading it, because I know it's always a blast just to go and travel together with you and your work. As we are talking about the traveling, I know that you are a big traveler. You've been all around the world, different kind of places, you know. And Infamous Mind is a little bit different. We go kind of in a different kind of directions and the topics. And I know you also did a research, and not just one, but many when it's coming to the serial killers. Can you tell us a little bit more about the different places? And if I can say which one was kind of the most interesting or the most scary when it comes to you and your research?
Um, yeah, so we did a lot of serial killer victim sites. So let's say Richard Trenton Chase, aka the Vampire of Sacramento, we went to the houses that he stalked, that he watched, and he entered and killed the people. And it's kind of interesting is when they caught Richard Trenton Chase and they asked him, they said, "Why did you go in this house and kill 4 family members?" He says, "Because their door was unlocked." So you're telling me that if the door was locked, those 4 people would probably still be living. But because their door was unlocked, he was able to enter that house, look at those people, and killed all 4 of them. And Richard Trenton Chase, he was a very sick person. Before he was killing humans, he was taking like little birds and breaking their heads off and drinking their blood. And that's why they call him the Vampire of Sacramento. And he was known to drink the blood of his victims. So we did a documentary called Conversations of a Serial Killer for 2-4 Productions in England. So they flew all the way from England to Sacramento, California to investigate this and interview me, because I wrote the article about it.
Yeah.
And asking me about Richard Trenton Chase. So we did that, and we filmed at Preston Castle. And here's the funny thing about Preston Castle. Richard Trenton Chase was never at Preston Castle. That's a prison for boys. But the boss of the time of HPI, I'm not going to mention her name, was saying that Richard Trenton Chase had spent time at Preston Castle. Well, that wasn't true. But they went with it because it was so majestic and it looked like a castle. And so when we did our investigation there, we got an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, and it was a voice of a man saying, "Whores, Horrors.
Wow.
Horrors. And he was saying that to a female investigator. And so they freaked out and they were excited because they got this EVP that said horrors, horrors, horrors. Well, anyway, years later, about 3 years later down the line, we discovered that EVP actually came from one of the male investigators. So that whole thing was a sham, except the part where they showed the different houses where the victims were. And we did get some strange evidence, like the house where the 4 people were killed. We took pictures inside the house, and we got mist. It was like the ghosts were still there. And that house is kind of interesting too, because there's this little wall before you get to the house. And when Richard Trenton Chase was watching that house, he was behind that wall releasing his feces. He was, I can't say that word, he was, he was...
We understand, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God.
So
yes.
That's pretty nasty, you know.
I can just imagine, the feeling when you think about he's really psychotic. He has lots of issues, especially when you're talking that he's drinking the blood of the victims. That's telling us also that he's not scared. We're talking about HIV, we're talking about Hep C, and many different kind of diseases that are really coming straight from the blood, and they cannot be cured because we still don't have a cure for that. Unfortunately, but hopefully in the future. And he is not that telling you how he's disconnected from reality, that nothing can happen. Yeah.
And who defecates? I mean, he's defecating watching that house. So somehow in his head, he's getting off on it and defecating behind the wall of that house.
And I can mention this. I'm going to use medical word. There is enocopresis. It's a Latin word for actually, ladies and gentlemen, using feces to play, with them. And many people that do have mental issues, they do have enocopresis. So they will actually do the drawing or the painting on the walls with their own feces. They will also do that, send the messages. And as we are feeling disgusted, actually, they are becoming more excited, or they're becoming, like you're saying, this is their thrill. So that also tells me, as somebody who's deep into psychology and studying human mind, observing so many, different minds through my life, grown-ups and adults, I say that enocopresis or defecating, when you're talking about the victims or having mental issues, is one of them. And then you mentioned something very important, Paul. You said that he was killing the birds and drinking the blood from the birds. Do you know how old was he, and how did they figure out that he was doing that?
He was like in his 20s, and other people saw him actually breaking the head off birds and drinking the blood. He would show off to his friends and say hey, I'm enjoying drinking the blood of this bird.
And that tells us again what kind of twisted this mind is, and how actually some people can go deep inside of that hole and never come back, because from the birds he went deeper and deeper and end up doing that with the humans, because I think the birds as I think about his psychoanalysis, were just a testing ground to see. And then he, like you're saying, he liked to be a show off. He likes to see the human reaction as he's terrorizing others, and he's enjoying, showing his power and being more powerful. Really psychotic, really a huge issue with the mind there. We can say very, very huge, psychotic behavior, delusions, and probably, I'm sure, grandiose fantasies of being higher, like you're saying, a vampire, because some of them believe they're goddesses, supreme beings, and or like you're saying, a vampire, somebody who has all this power. So very, very, very scary when you think about the one that you did investigation on. Is there any others that you would like to share when it's coming to the serial killers?
Many.
Please go ahead. That's why we have you here. I love to dig into your mind.
Oh my God. We did Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
They're notorious for their killings. They had a little cabin off in this little town. I can't think of the town's name right now,
Yeah.
but it's near Sacramento. And they had a cabin over there. They would go to bars and stuff and pick up women and bring the women back to the cabin, and they would videotape them. And they would tie up the women and do torturous things to these poor women.
Yeah.
And of course they did sexual things, and then they actually killed them on video. They had over, when the police raided that cabin, they had over 30 videotapes of their killings. They were a team going out there looking for women and killing them. And very sick minds. They had all these crazy fantasies. That's why they got along so well, because they had all these crazy fantasies, and they became a team stalking and finding these poor women. So anyway, the cabin was burned down, probably by the locals, because it was a sickening crime, and they didn't even want to look at that cabin anymore, and they just burned it down to the ground. So when my team went over there, we had a psychic there. You've heard of the psychic Sylvia Brown?
Of course, Sylvia Brown was amazing psychic and amazing person. Too bad and too sad that she went to heaven, but of course, I know who Sylvia is, yes.
Sylvia Brown's secretary was on my team.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, that was amazing, yes.
Yeah, Holly DeLauder, that was her name. And she was a psychic. Okay. And Holly DeLauder said, when we went there, we couldn't find where the cabin was located. So Holly, being a psychic, she says, the cabin was located at this direction. So we followed it, and sure enough, we talked to a couple fishermen, and they said, yeah, the cabin was there. And then we saw remnants of where the cabinet was. Yeah. And we took a photograph, and we got a mist, and the mist looked like it was in the form of a female. Oh. Yeah, so we think that was probably one of the victims. So, yeah, so Leonard Lake, Charles Ng, we did that investigation. Of course, we did Doretha Puente. Yeah, on F Street. And I was actually invited. In fact, in the newspaper, it shows me in front of the house, posing in front of the house. Wow. But, yeah, we did an investigation there. The only thing we got from the Doretha Puente one was there was a lot of orbs that came out of the roof. And there was no reason for that. And the orbs just kept on coming. And, of course, it was the victims buried in the front yard, something like 12 victims. And she would go to like a little bar across the street. And I can't think of the name of it right now. But she would go over there, and she would find these elderly men that were on Social Security. And she would have them move into her boarding house and sign over documents that she would get the Social Security check. And from that, she would take out the rent, food, and whatever. So they agreed to that. And of course, when she poisoned them and killed them, she would collect those Social Security checks. So she would actually be taking their money. So she was, all her victims, she was collecting their Social Security checks.
So the motive was for killing the Social Security, and she was killing basically people for her own greed for the money and for her own safety and the pleasure, bring them, lure them in, I'll be with you, I'll take care of you, and etc. All the bait goes on, and after that, after she kills them, she picks up all the money from, like you're saying, the insurances. That's quite sad and quite horrible, but there was a couple of the other serial killers that I know that they did that, as we did, stories of the infamous minds. But is there one that, kind of, another I love, I can say it, he's the way of acting, of course, and behavior, but it's just something that I keep working on, and I have a couple of my brothers also trying to help me, and that's kind of work in progress. I'm now giving a little hint there, and that's Jack the Ripper. And I know you've been in England, I know you did the research when it's coming to this mystery. Can you give us a little bit about that story? Share your wisdom.
Okay, sure. When I went to London, England, I went on the East End candlelight tour of Jack the Ripper and the Cray twins. The Cray twins were gangsters, but they were also too in the East End of London, and Jack the Ripper, of course. So when we were going to the Jack the Ripper murder sites, I mean, you can feel the energy there. You get this feeling of dread. It was just a real creepy feeling. I mean, even now when I talk about it, I get some goosebumps from it. Jack the Ripper was a very unusual character. Of course, I think he was very rich. I think he had medical knowledge because a lot of the cuts on his victims were very medically precise. And only like a skilled surgeon or maybe a skilled butcher would know how to do that. And they thought Leather Apron, who was a butcher, was a possible suspect as Jack the Ripper. I think he worked for the royal family. And I think that possibly he was a medical consultant for the royal family, so he had some surgical knowledge. And what was one of the things that the tour guide said that really intrigued me, he said that Jack the Ripper was known to ride in this horse carriage. Well, people riding in horse carriages are usually rich. They have money.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And so when they came up to a pretty prostitute, he would look at the prostitute and offer them grapes. And grapes weren't plentiful in England.
Yes, well, especially at that time. Yes.
They were bringing them from America to England, so grapes were expensive, and no prostitute could afford grapes. And he would entice them with grapes, and they go, "Oh my God!" And they eat a couple and go, "Oh my God, this is so good. You want more?" "Yeah." "Well, come into the stagecoach." And when they got into the stagecoach, that was it. And I mean, hopefully he let them eat all the grapes, but that was it. And then who's ever driving that stagecoach had to be in cahoots with Jack the Ripper. He had to have some basic knowledge of what Jack the Ripper was doing. So that tells me right there, and they don't ever talk about it. They always talk about Jack the Ripper, but it seems like he had a partner. He had a driver of that stagecoach. For him, there's no way he could not have known that was something happening to that woman in the stagecoach with Jack the Ripper. So that's
a good conclusion. Yes, sorry, but I love the conclusion that you're bringing up. Yes.
And I know they have DNA samples because there was a shawl that this woman was wearing, and they said they had some unknown DNA on that shawl, and I'm pretty sure that's Jack the Ripper's DNA. So they need to test that DNA and then do a reverse family history check, see who his cousins were. That way you can pinpoint who the culprit was.
And you know what? I love that you mentioned that because I'm gonna talk for a moment about that show. I was digging a little bit deeper with, sound like you're saying, with my own little crew, and somebody was mentioning that they found a male shawl with some blood on it, and that was left on that prostitute. And as they were looking on the quality of that shawl, that it's not possible that can be